Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to England once again for the first time in what feels like a good little while. So for this review, we are going to have a look at a beer that is an all-English collaboration. It's an all-Yorkshire collaboration and even an all-Leeds collaboration at that. And both of the breweries involved in this one have featured on the channel a good few times before. The home brewery hasn't featured on the channel though for about 18 months, if memory serves me correctly. For what reason, I don't know. And the away brewery featured on the channel last time around Christmas. But both of them do some very, very nice beers. So I have to say I'm very curious to see what happens when you put them together. And I don't think I've had a collaboration involving both of these two on their own at the same time. So I've had a few where both of these brews have collaborated with Swedish breweries, but very much looking forward to trying this one. This is a style that I know both of these breweries do quite well. So fingers crossed it's another interesting beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one. So yeah, like I said, we are going to go to Leeds in Yorkshire for this one, both breweries based in the city, and for the home brewery we are going to Northern Monk. This beer is part of their Patrons project, which is essentially their collaboration series that they do that involves both breweries and different restaurants and organisations and things. But this one is called the Boombox. So it's the Patrons Project 27.02. They give all of these things different numbers, but like I say, the name of this beer is the Boombox. It comes in at 7.2% ABV. It's a New England IPA, this one, and it's brewed in collaboration with their Leeds neighbours North Brewing Company, and also in collaboration with the British Culture Archive as well. And we'll talk a little bit about all three people, or all three organisations, I guess we could say, that are involved in this one. But yeah, this beer was released here in Sweden as part of the Tillfälligt temporary assortment through Systembolaget on the 13th of July 2021, although they didn't get the delivery here in Skåne until the 16th, and I'm not sure exactly why that was. Systembolaget have been a little bit late on some of their deliveries recently. But yeah, really looking forward to this. Fingers crossed it's another good beer, and I hope you guys enjoy my take on this one. So let's see how we go. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about both the breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done, both from Northern Monk and from North Brewing, and we will no doubt add more to both of those lists in the near future. I'll also put the link down there to the British Culture Archive as well for you to look at, but there's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the English beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, quite regularly when I'm back home in the motherland of Scotland. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about the breweries then, and we will of course kick off with Northern Monk since they are the home brewery. So Northern Monk, as I've told you before, are based in Leeds in Yorkshire in the north of England, and they were founded back in 2013 by Russell Bissett. So he started brewing in his mum's basement, and he launched the company officially at the Sparrows Beer Cafe in Bradford. But in August of 2014 they moved into the old Flax store in the city of Leeds at Marshall's Mill, and they've been working to expand their capacity ever since. So they say that they like to pay homage to the old monastic brewing tradition in England that went on for centuries, but it's largely overlooked these days. When we talk about monastic brewing, everyone tends to think of Belgium mainly, of course. But at the brewery they have the refectory, which is their bar and restaurant, and this is somewhere that I do plan to visit on my England tour that I'll be hopefully doing next year if the whole COVID-19 pandemic buggers off. But they also have their Patrons Project, of which this beer is a member, of course. But this is where they team up with other breweries for collaboration brews, and also with local restaurants and different, artistic and cultural organisations as well. But their main brewing operations these days take place in the refectory on Sydenham Place in Leeds, and this has a total capacity of 24,000 hectolitres. But they recently launched a new project called the OFS project as well, which is to brew small batch beers in the original brewery in the old Flax store as well. But the current head brewer is Adam Lyle, and they've produced around 270 different kinds of beer as of July 2021. These guys are one of the most respected English craft breweries, and I think they're one of the longer lasting independent ones as well. out of the new wave of English craft breweries, actually, come to think of it, because Magic Rock, of course, became part of one of the bigger organisations. I forget exactly who now. But yeah, you know, they were, you know, Northern Monk were one of the originals, along with the likes of Magic Rock as well. So, and Cloudwater, I think, would be the other one we could count within the ranks there as well. And the likes of Dea, the Dea Verdants, Wylam had been around, but they didn't really turn American style until a little bit later. So yeah, Northern Monk, Magic Rock and Cloudwater were the big three in England, if I remember rightly, for quite a wee while. But like I say, very well respected brewery, doing some awesome beers, and they're definitely worth checking out if you haven't done so already. But yeah, like I say, I want to go and visit the refectory at some stage, and that will be an out and about video on the channel at some point soon. But yeah, that's all I can tell you about Northern Monk. As always, if you want to learn more, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. Anyway, on to the away brewery then, North Brewing. So North Brewing Company are based in Leeds as well. And they were founded by John Gingell and Christian Townsley, who owned the North Beer Bar, and this opened back in 1997. So today they operate 6 venues around the city, and apparently North Bar used to work quite closely with the likes of James Clay and Vertical Drinks to help promote craft beer in Yorkshire. As I've told you in other reviews, you know, Yorkshire has a little bit of a unique history in England when it comes to craft beer. It was one of the places where the whole idea of microbrewing never really left, actually. But the brewery itself is located, the original brewery was located in Taverners Walk Industrial Estate, and it has a 200-person tap room and a 15 BBL brew kit. And the original brewers were Seb Brink, who used to work for Golden Owl, and Darius Darwell, who worked for the Bristol Beer Company. But these days, it's Seb who is the head brewer, and he runs the brew team. He's got quite a large brew team underneath him, from what I understand, but they've got a tap room in Sovereign Square in the city centre, and they've recently opened up a new brewery called Springwell, which has a 21,000 square foot floor space, and this will take their brewing capacity up to 16,000 hectolitres of beer per year, as well as hosting a 500-person tap room. So that is somewhere that I certainly look forward to visiting at some point in the future. But as of July 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 200 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd, and they are known mainly for their New England Hazy IPAs. They're one of the really respected producers of that beer style in England. But they do other things as well. I've had a Schwarzbier from them, which was very nice. They have done imperial stouts and things, but to be honest with you, North Brewing Company is one that I really need to explore a little bit more. I would love to be able to try their beers a little bit more regularly. Maybe I need to go and spend a little bit of time in the motherland, of course, once again, and do that over a few months. But hey ho, we'll just see how that goes. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about North Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn a little bit more about these guys, again, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done as well. But yeah, that is it for your history section. Let's get on to a few details about the beer itself. So like I said to you at the start of the video, this one is a 7.2% New England IPA. It was brewed as a collaboration with the British Culture Archive. You'll find their link in the video description below, and these guys apparently are a non-profit organisation that aim to document the evolution of culture in the 4 countries of the UK through documentary photography, and there's some quite interesting things in there. I quite like going and looking at all the old Scottish photos and things like that to see what it used to be like. But yeah, definitely interesting to go and have a little rake through some of the photos there, so it is worth looking at that if you're interested. But yeah, the details about the beer itself, like I say, 7.2% New England IPA. This one is hopped with Mosaic from America, which we know quite well, 14% alpha acid, lovely kind of tangerine notes normally, but it's also hopped with Bullion, which is an English variety, and this is one that I might have had it actually from a beer from one of the breweries in Stockholm, but I'm not 100% sure actually. I'm sure I had it in a beer from Pang Pang, because they used a bunch of English hops in one of their IPAs recently. But yeah, as I say, Bullion is an English hop. It was actually first developed back in about 1919. and first developed properly for commercial use in the 1930s, but then it was released in 1938 commercially, with a growth in production over the years until the late 1960s, when it peaked before it eventually went out of UK production in 1986. So it comes in with between 5 and 9% alpha acid apparently, and it's got big spicy floral notes to it and some blackcurranty fruits also. So it sounds quite interesting, so I have to say I'm very curious to see how it plays out in this beer. So I think that's quite an interesting one. They're using an old English hop, and they're doing this in collaboration with a British culture, with the British Culture Archive as well, who are documenting British history. So they must have a bunch of photos on there about you know, hop farms and things like that in the south of England. So yeah, interesting stuff. I'll need to rake through the website, as I say, have a look for that side of things too. But yeah, that is all the details you need about the beer. So as you can see, it's a 440 milliliter can, this one, which is fairly standard. I think I paid 50 Swedish kroners for this, so that translates to €5, about £4, you know, maybe about £4.50 sterling, roughly, a little bit less than that actually, about £4.50 sterling, which is probably cheaper than what I would pay for this in any of the bottle shops in Scotland, or even down south in England, of course. So yeah, £4.50, and probably in the region of like $5.50 American for those of you watching over there. But yeah, there you can see pictures of the old boombox in there. Bit of a kind of cultural icon, as we said. But yeah, you can see on the side there is the Northern Monk symbol there, Northern Monk patrons, North Brewing Company, and also the British Culture Archive as well. You can see the can is sweating a little bit too. But yeah, plain silver top on this one. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with tasting number 27.02 of the Northern Monk Patron Series Boombox. Yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. I'm very curious to see what this has in store for us. Let's do it. So this video might be a little bit longer just because it's a collaboration and there's some interesting facts about the beer and the hops themselves. I'm a big ingredients nerd, as you'll know if you've watched the channel for any length of time. But yeah, there we go. There we go. So that is about 80% of the beer in the glass just now. Let me just check that this is lined up so that my OCD is happy. But yeah, that looks pretty good. So as you can see with this one, it's kind of poured exactly as you would expect for a New England IPA. So there's a solid, just shy of a finger worth of a frothy, I would say creamy coloured head on this one. I don't think that's a perfect white head. That has certainly got a little bit of a kind of creamy tint to it. But yeah, in terms of the colour then, it's a lovely, very bright, but still quite rich yellow. It appears a little bit brighter and paler to you guys, just from what I can see on the viewfinder on the camera. But yeah, it certainly looks very, very nice. I always like comparing the New England IPAs to different fruit juices, because that's just what their appearance reminds me of. But this one to me looks a little bit like a kind of mixed mango and passion fruit juice or something like this. So yeah, remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. That determines the magnitude of the colour. 2, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. And then any adjuncts and barrel aging, of course, will play a role there. But those tend to play more of a role in sour beers rather than New England IPAs. And I think the wort boil that you have with a New England IPA is somewhere between 60 and 90 minutes, of course. But the level of haze on this one for a 7.2%er is pretty impressive. It's leaning towards that soupier, gloopier side of things, and the level of haze, of course, is dependent on the yeast that you use, the wheat content and the oat content. There's no real rules about this, but it would usually be, it usually just varies from recipe to recipe and brewery to brewery and so on. But yeah, in terms of a New England IPA, nothing particularly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the appearance. Let's take a look at the aroma and see how we get on. That's quite interesting. Yeah, one thing I'll say about this, I can smell straight away, this one has got a wee bit of age on it. It's not at its freshest, and again, when it's an import into Systembolaget and things, you have to be aware of this. So yeah, I'm not sure how long this one will have been sitting. I'm not sure exactly when it was released, but you know, with Systembolaget and import beers, sometimes you get this. What you can often smell with New England IPAs is that the oats get a little bit kind of powdery and the wheat comes across as a little bit almost creamy in a sense. So you get this kind of little bit of aroma out of it. I can smell a wee bit of that in this, but I think it should be all right. The English beers that we've had before have usually been in fairly good condition, so we'll give it the benefit of the doubt for just now. But yeah, just be aware of that with these beers, because that's one of the problems with Systembolaget is the import. There needs to be more, collaboration between Systembolaget and the import companies, so that the import companies are bringing the beers over fresh enough, and then Systembolaget has the flexibility to get them out on the shelves as quickly as possible. So that is something that they need to work on a little bit. But anyway, as I say, when it comes to New England IPAs, for me, there are 6 different directions you can take these. They can be more kind of farmhousey. They can be yeasty and farmhousey. They can be a little bit more rye-leaning and grainy. They can be wheaty and bitey, oaty and creamy, or more barley malt leaning and bready. Or they can be a little bit more kind of brown sugary and things like this. So yeah. These are the 6 different directions, of course. And quite often they will display multiple characteristics. So for me, the first impression of this one is that it's quite well balanced between the sort of, barley malty bready sort of thing and the more oaty side of the beer as well. If there's wheat in this, which there probably will be, it comes across as quite soft, if you like. So for me, barley malt leaning and bready and a bit oaty on top. But yeah, let's try and break down the aroma of this one for you and just see how we go. But I will say this is a lovely smelling beer. So yeah, when we take the aroma in a little bit more deeply, so you can smell there's a lovely soft white bready character underneath that. It comes across as a little bit fluffy, and it almost smells like, when you get that flour in just the base of a fresh bread roll or something like that. It really smells like that. There's a wee bit of dryness to that kind of barley malt white bready thing in there, but there's definitely a kind of little hint of a more bread crusty element to it, but not too toasty or well fired or anything like that. Just a more kind of fresh brown bready sort of thing, like a hedgehog roll for those of you watching in England. There might be a different name for it down there though, or a fresh roll or something like this. But you can certainly smell a wee bit of, there's a tiny little bit of wheaty bitiness out of this one at the back of the nose, but I think the wheat is more along the lines of having the effect of thickening up the bread and smoothing it out to a degree. But on top of that, of course, you can smell the nice oaty characters in this one, and the oats do smell a little bit dry and almost powdery in a sense. But you can smell the sort of creaminess that they're giving the beer as well, actually. So yeah, there is a wee bit of that going on there, but there's a slight degree of sweetness to this one as well. You can smell a little bit of that typical kind of, there's a very slight sort of Werther's Originally type thing in this. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of golden promise in this. There's just something really familiar about this when I compare it to the likes of the Apex Brewing Company beers that we have over here in Sweden. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is potentially using like one of the WLP 66, like a London. I wouldn't be surprised if that's using a London fog yeast and a bit of golden promise. There's just some familiarities about this beer for sure. It does remind me of some of the Apex ones. But yeah, the malty base in this one is quite nice. It comes across as quite soft, but it's got all the elements you would expect. But the oaty softness in this one is really nice and creamy. And you've got that soft white bready character underneath it too, which I can certainly appreciate. So yeah, I do like how this goes together, and it gets a big thumbs up from me. Actually, I really like how that goes about its business on the malty backbone. I think the malty backbone in these beers is often underrated, but on top of that, you do get just a little hint of that kind of Werther's Original butter candy type thing. There's just a wee bit of that sweetness on top there, and that I suspect comes from Golden Promise. Maybe a tiny little hint of a McVitie's digestive biscuit as well, but I would stress that those two elements I've just mentioned there do take a little bit of a back seat to the other things. It's quite a soft, bready leaning New England IPA, this one. But yeah, let's look at the hoppy side of things then. So the hoppy part of the beer, for me, this one is quite, it's got a little bit of earthiness to it, but the earthiness is quite mild actually. Normally with English hops, I think they've usually got a little bit of a kind of more prominent earthiness to them, but you certainly get a little bit of that out there. And Mosaic has its own earthiness as well, which is worth noting. But there's certainly a wee bit of herbal character in there, and for me the herbal notes are a distinctive feature of English hops. But you've got a nice you have got a nice little bit of a floral brightness to the beer. It's not overly pungent or spicy or anything like that. It's just quite bright. And then on the kind of front tip of the nose, if you like, you've got quite a bright, zesty character out of this one. You've got quite a big zesty kind of grassy note to the beer, and that does have a fair wee bit of pungency behind it, I would say. So yeah, I like how that side of this of the beer goes about its business. So yeah, it gets a thumbs up from me. And it gets a thumbs up from me on the green component of things too, and I think it fits quite well with the backbone of the beer. This is one of these beers where the aroma just fits together really nicely. But let's focus on that fruity side of things, because there is a bit of a quirky thing, and I've avoided mentioning it just now. But you know, you've got a really interesting, you've got a sort of mix of zest in this one, which will be from the tangerines and the mosaic, but you can certainly smell a sort of red fruity character underneath this one. And I mean, I've had a couple of interesting hops in this regard recently that have a more red fruity character to them. There's the, I forget what it's called, is it Barte Rouge or something like that from France? That's a really beautiful hop that gives you lots of raspberry flavour. I mean, you've got Northern Brewer from Germany, which is quite popular for the Doppelbox and things like this. Bramley's Cross in England for barley wines and Scotch ales and stuff like this. And of course there's Eureka over in America, and you know, even just using Cascade and a bit of Chinook and things in some of these big barley wines is kind of common. But the red fruity character you get out of this is really, really interesting. It's supposed to give you a big black curranty note, but I'd say that it's maybe even a little bit richer than that, because I've always found currants are quite soft in their flavours. It is almost a little bit more berry-like in a sense. It's almost more like a black berry rather than a black currant, and it does even have a wee bit of sharpness to it in a sense. So yeah, it's got quite a rich, darker fruity note to it, this one. And it's not, I wouldn't say it's figgy, it's not figgy, it's just a bit too rich, I think, to be figgy in a sense. But yeah, I would say there's quite a bit of blackcurrant and blackberry. I'd say it leans more towards the blackberry side of things, so that's definitely the bullion hop that's in this one. But you can definitely smell that kind of more juicy, lighter, tangerine-y sort of thing from the mosaic as well. And I'd say that it's interesting when you mix these two together, because the you know, the zestiness, the sheer zestiness that you get out, of the sheer zestiness that you get out of the mosaic in this one is actually a little bit more reminiscent of Amarillo, so that's an interesting point to make about this beer too. So yeah, interesting fruity characteristics to it, this beer, I have to say. But yeah, I think it is about time that we have a taste of this one, because I'm seeing the length of the review on the camera. But yeah, let's have a taste of this beer and see how we go. So yeah, this one is the Boombox Patrons Project 2702 collaboration between Northern Monk and North Brewing Company, both from Leeds, and the British Culture Archive. I think this is going to be awesome. 7.2% New England IPA with mosaic and bullion. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Definitely take a bit of time to enjoy that aroma, because it is quite quirky. Let's go for it. Oh yeah, that's really nice. I mean, first impressions on the flavour, it's a very slick and still quite smooth and creamy leaning New England IPA, this one. I like that. I really do like how this one goes together. I know I've really been I should be a bit more kind of forthright, I guess, if you like, in getting some more Northern Monk things, because I think the last one I reviewed from these guys might have been the Faith, which is actually a regular through Systembolaget in Sweden now. So I need to make sure that I review some of their more kind of quirky things. I do want to have a go at the North Star as well. I've been seeing the English guys reviewing these beers as well, but I do want to have a go at the North Star, so I need to figure out where to get one of those from. But this is a lovely New England IPA, so thumbs up to both Northern Monk and to North for this. But this is nothing that you should expect a good beer from these breweries. But yeah, first impression of this is it's a lovely, smooth, creamy, but also quite slick and oily and juicy New England IPA. This is lovely. So let's try and break down the flavour of this one for you then and see how we go. Straight away across the middle of your palate, this is both middle third and back third of your palate. You can feel that soft white bready character that just goes right up to the back of the middle of your tongue there, and again it has a wee bit of that kind of powdery sort of thing to it. You know, in a sense you've got that sort of the fresh flour on the bottom of your bread roll. It really reminds me of that. That's what the bready backbone of this beer is like. When you go further into the aftertaste, you do start to get little elements of a slightly wholemealy kind of bready kind of note of it. You can feel it just sort of mellowing out to be a little bit more wholemealy in its bready character. And I certainly like how that goes together. But on top of the bready base, you do get a lovely kind of smooth wheaty layer out of this one, which I think is very, very nice. So yeah, there's a lovely kind of smooth wheaty element to this beer, absolutely. But the wheat does take a bit of a back seat to the other things, although in fairness, the wheat, a little bit of the bitiness of the wheat builds up and when you go further into the aftertaste. But yeah, sitting on top of that wheaty layer though, of course, you get the oats. You can feel that nice smooth oaty character to this one. And if you go down the middle line of your palate, it feels quite thick, but then as it spreads out across to the sides of your palate, it just feels a little bit more kind of smooth and things. Absolutely. So yeah, I do like how the oaty notes come out in this beer, and it does feel as if it thickens up a wee bit the further that you go into the aftertaste. So yeah, the oaty notes in this one, I think, the oaty notes in this are very, very nice, as I say, and then it does even sweeten up a little bit the further you go into the aftertaste. But in the middle of that middle third of your palate, you can feel there's a little bit of an oval there, and in the dead centre, like the dead centre of your palate, you can feel a little bit of a kind of almost sweet caramel there. But as you move out from that, it becomes a little bit more Werther's Original, like a little bit butter candy, and I would say the brown sugary notes are a bit more present, if you like, than you would have picked up from the aroma. But as you move out towards the extremities of that middle third of your palate, there certainly is a wee hint of a biscuity, McVitie's digestive sort of thing in this. I would still say, I think my sort of hypothesis, if you like, of WLP 66 and a bit of Golden Promise, I'd say that holds in this. There's just something familiar about this beer that reminds me of the Apex beers I've been drinking over here in Sweden. But it's beautifully done. This, as I say, a more creamy, smooth-leaning New England IPA, this one. So thumbs up to both Northern Monk and North for this one. Let's focus on the back third of your palate then. Let's go on. So if you go from that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of bready build up and a wee bit more concentrated bread crust. Then as you go into the back third of your palate, you can feel a bit more of a bread crusty base, the lovely kind of soft white bready elements there, and a bit of a smoother wheaty element sitting on top of it. But then on top of that, you've got that nice airy yeasty sort of thing as well. So yeah, I do like how that goes together. But yeah, the more airy, bready, yeasty notes that you get out of this are very, very nice. So you can feel when you start at the back of the palate, the beer feels a little bit taller, the flavour feels taller, and as you go further forward in this one, you can feel it just dropping down a little bit. In the middle third of your palate, the flavours are a wee bit more condensed together. And as I say, in that back third of your palate, you get a slight bitiness off the wheat, but not a lot. The wheat takes a bit of a back seat in this beer for me. And I would say that my concerns that I had from the aroma earlier on, you can get a wee teeny bit of what I was thinking you might. You can just feel a wee bit of the kind of thickening up of this beer, but it really doesn't affect the beer overall actually. And I would say that it's actually in very nice condition as we have it just now. So yeah, no complaints from me about that. But on the hoppy side of things then, let's focus on that. In the back corners of the palate then, you do get a little bit of earthiness from this beer, and you would expect that when there's an English hop in here and you've got Mosaic. Both of those will contribute to that. But the earthiness is quite nice and quite smooth. But as you move further forward, it certainly gives you a little bit of a herbal quality, absolutely. Then as you push forward towards the kind of front corners of the palate, you can feel a little bit more kind of floral aromaticity. Remember that your New England IPAs are dependent on late addition hops and dry hopping as well. Early addition hops, the ones that give you bitterness, those of course are more implemented more in West Coast IPAs. But yeah, it's usually within the last half hour of the boil that you get a lot of the flavour and aroma hopping, and then the dry hopping of course comes after the wort boil. But this beer is not that bitter at all, to be honest with you. But at the front corners of the palate, you get a lovely kind of quite bright floral aromaticity. I wouldn't describe it as spicy, but it's more kind of bright, and it almost has a wee bit of zestiness to it as well. But then round the front curve of the palate, you've got a lovely lighter grassy note there, but again the grassiness has a wee bit of a zesty character to it. It's kind of interesting because what I was saying in the aroma about Mosaic behaving a little bit more like Amarillo in a sense, I think that holds true in the flavour as well. But yeah, the green component of this one is quite bright, floral and zesty, and I do like that for sure. But yeah, I think that that goes together quite nicely. The green component gives you a wee bit of contrast with the malty and yeasty backbone. But let's have a look at the fruity side of the beer then. So yeah, fruity side of the beer then, I would say it's quite nice and slick actually. So I mean, you can feel the base of the front third of your palate in this beer. It's quite, it's got a lovely sort of bready character to it. As we say, you get that nice kind of smooth bready base there. You can feel a bit, you can feel a wee bit of the kind of dryness of the kind of oaty kind of character that I was talking about as well. But if we go to that border region between middle third and front third of your palate, if you like, you can feel a bit of a Bready Build Up again, a wee bit of a bread crust, and I think that does work out really nicely. But then on top of that, of course, on top of that bready layer, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. And this one is quite interesting actually, because at the back of that front third of your palate, it's kind of interesting because neither of the hops really take too much of a hold there. It almost feels like you've got a little bit of a kind of sultana type quality on that back third of your tongue, maybe even slightly peary if you like. But yeah, a bit of a more dried fruity character there. But as you move further forward, you can feel it's almost like you've got a base layer of red fruit, and when you go into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's distinctly more oily. You can feel the kind of black currants and blackberries sitting underneath, but then you've got the orange tangerine sitting on top of that, and they come together to give you this really unusual mix of red fruit and citrusy fruit. So that the fruity character in this one is quite unique, and it almost, as I say, the orangey notes actually come across as a bit zestier, because, such as Amarillo, because of that red fruity influence underneath. So yeah, back half of your palate, I would say sultana-like and pear-like, almost dried fruity. Then the front half of the front third of your palate is red fruits underneath, black currants, blackberries as well, giving you a wee bit of sharpness almost. Then an oily tangerine orange on top, but it's quite zesty at that too. And there's almost just a wee teeny bit of lime behind the very front tip of the tongue when you're getting all these grassy esters. So I mean, overall, this is a really quirky New England IPA in terms of the fruity characters, but everything else is quite, you know, straight shooting. But it just goes to show you the English do have some good hops out there. I'd be curious to see. I'd love to see, you know, Northern Monk do Bullion on its own as a New England IPA, because I think it would work really nicely. So yeah, big thumbs up to both Northern Monk and North for this. But a single hop Bullion IPA could be New England IPA, and even a West Coast IPA could be really interesting. But I don't know if it's possible to do something like that with the volumes. I'm sure it would be possible as a one-off, but to do it as a regular would be another question, of course. But yeah, as a New England IPA, lovely beer this one, and very quirky fruity character, so this is definitely worth trying if you get the chance. Let's round off the review with the mouthfeel then. So this is definitely a kind of top end of mid-bodied beer, somewhere between, yeah, middle of the spectrum towards top end of mid-bodied. I think that's fair. Carbonation of this one is very smooth. The beer does have a good degree of kind of slickness to it, which I certainly like, and I think that suits the flavours of this beer. It's got an element of creaminess in there as well, and some nice oily, juicy, fruity sort of things. So yeah, I think it goes together really well. But the malt base in this one, as we say, very smooth, nice and soft and bready. It does get a wee bit kind of more grainy and drier, as I say, and the further you go into the aftertaste, it's a bit more of the wholemeal bready note, but you know, smooth, creamy on top of that, and a little bit of sweetness. And then in terms of hoppy bitterness with this, I think this is a fairly standard, but I would be surprised if this feels like it's about 20 IBUs or something like that, 25 at the absolute most. But always take my IBU counts with a pinch of salt. That's my weakest point of beer reviewing. But yeah, 25 IBUs. Lovely mix of smoothness and creaminess, and a very slight sweetness in the malt base. Then you've got a really interesting oily, slightly slick fruit, a mix between red fruit and a kind of citrusy zestiness. So I do like how this goes together actually. So yeah, big big fan of this beer, I have to say, and it does make me want to try a few more things from Northern Monk, so need to get on that. But I think we can round off this review there then. This one has been a bit longer because it's a collaboration review. So yeah, we can leave it at that for this one. This one was the Boombox, a 7.2% New England IPA with Mosaic and English hop bullion in it. A collaboration between Northern Monk as part of their Patrons project with North Brewing Company, also from Leeds, and the British Culture Archive. A lovely, lovely beer this, and I would highly recommend it. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Northern Monk and North, and let me know what photos you find from the British Culture Archive in the comment section below as well. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out everyone's involved in this, and I will catch you guys in the next review. Slange it, skull, cheers, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this one.